This is Larry. Larry has severe Parkinson's tremor disconnect syndrome. It's something like you'd think of if you've seen Michael J. Fox in the last 10 years or so. Sometimes you see him in a good state when that medication's on him and they really med him right before he goes on and he tries to hold it together. There are other things that they found that in certain cases really work better. He's unable to really handle the doorknob correctly, and he'll make exaggerated facial expressions and contortions and things like that. But he's about to get some help from somebody else who also has this same problem, who has alleviated it. And I'd like you to notice the speed of what it happens here. So they first met, and they've talked about this before and what's going to happen. And you can tell he can't really get it together. And he asked him if how's it been? How's your week been? And it hasn't been good. So he gives him a pin, and if you click on the end of it, it'll put out a little meter to mount. Tells him to put it under his tongue and rub it and everything, which you can tell he can't even act on it right, but he's very eager to try this because of the state that he's in. He starts trying to respond to him, and he just tells him, don't talk, just try to relax for a while. And this is 1:37. We're going to try to speed this up here and show you an idea of what happens. Tells him just to relax. And so 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes into it, and you see his arm go behind his head, and then he points at his feet. And I'd like to mention right now, Larry's back with us. But we're going to let this settle in, especially since this is the very first time this has happened. And watch, in just a minute or two, he is really back to normal. Quite the effect in a short period of time. You can see his cognition and his relaxation, and there's none of that going on anymore. And he's just kicked his head back and pointed towards his toes earlier. He's like, oh, my feet quit twitching and wiggling. And at under 5 minutes here, he sets up and he goes, wow, that was quick. His hands no longer even tremor whatsoever anymore. They're pretty much stasis here going on. It's an amazing effect. His voice is coming back to him. And again, to give you an idea, here he was before, and here he is after. And how he can just sing now. There's been a lot of breakthroughs, and I've seen a lot of videos. I've made a few videos of my 420 series where around April 20th each year I'll do something that they found out about it, whether it's old or not. Of course, with my videos going along with it, I've shown a lot of elder things, like pieces of rope they found made out of hemp. They're over 20,000 years old, and a 16,000-year-old one. And ancient shamans that were buried with it and so on, and where actually the culture of it comes from, and how that Johnny Appleseed effect came to humanity. How it was an ancient medicine, and until very recently it was a medicine, and then all of a sudden there's this government thing that got in between it. And that seems to be laxing a lot now, so we probably shouldn't delve onto that. But I've talked about Scythians before, and of course Herodotus and all these people that made comments about it, and that made me think of this Dungeons and Dragons thing that I used folklore that would have told from back then in a story, so I could use it kind of to play things up. That's all it really was. But I found it weird in that story, and now looking at this effect, I think I know what was happening. For the idea was they came into this village, and there's lackadaisical work going on, if any, and people sitting around and mumbling and grumbling and doing these things, and you were supposed to be going to this place for this special thing, and it doesn't look like a special thing's really like going on by the description I give everybody. And there's this old lady there, and she's walking slowly and twitching and making hand gestures and freaking out and looking back and going forward and real confused and not knowing which way she's going, and people seem to be avoiding the hell out of her. Her hair is braided in the back and then two big braids on the side, which, due to her leaning over and relying on a cane and what you might think of as like a primitive form of a walker, it's her hair braids sag in front of her. And people are avoiding her, and so on is going on, and this thing's supposed to be happening, and it's supposed to be happening at noon. And everybody seems to be avoiding this lady, and eye contact and things going down this road here, and you don't really know why, but she goes up to this lodge that you're supposed to be going to when all of this happens, or where this goes at. And she goes up into this lodge with this group of people, and they actually suddenly get a hold of her and carry her and help her into it. And then something like a ritual of Herodotus talks about happens, and a big smoke out type of situation, and then all of a sudden this 5 foot tall, feeble, twitching lady full of tremors that can barely walk comes busting out of the front door of there and bangs her staff onto the ground that they've had inside of there as her ceremonial staff as the shaman. And now she's about a 5'8" tall lady, looking like something out of Lord of the Rings, where Gandalf takes 20 years off that man or more in a moment. And she starts yelling out to people on what the hell they had not been doing and all of these things, and people start scrambling to make things happen, and everybody's all of a sudden paying attention to this lady. In fact, people start coming up to her, and as they approach her, she just calls out their name and tells them what the hell they've been doing wrong and lacking and so on, and tells them to go off on it, and they go right off doing it with a nod and a bow, and they're out. And it doesn't get overwhelming really in front of it. And then eventually she calls on you people that are there, and you're supposed to come into the room with her. And you escort her up into the other room and so on. And hell, I'll leave it to the imagination on what goes on after that. But she tells you something that really needs to happen for all of humanity that'll save your people and her people and everything else, and you have to be one of the ones that'll do it. And she's been pulled out of this trance somehow just for this effect. They'll have a party, and the next morning comes up, and you're wondering where this lady is, and you go to the lodge and you don't see her, and you look over, and there's these people that are avoiding this old lady with her hair braided and bent over, and there she is again. You go up to the lady and try to speak, and she mumbles and says weird things and starts jerking funny, and you have to go do your quest. So whenever I heard about something like this, I got to thinking that, I put this into a D&D thing just for some type of graphics and give people a good idea, because it came out of that, and of course it involved a weed thing, and everybody's all... But no, really, looking back on it now, whenever you find this effect, maybe this was something that really, really happened, that there was a lady, and it made me start thinking, did they keep her in this state and then bring her out for ceremonies and stuff? First thought was that she was undergoing some kind of withdrawal. But that didn't look like what it was, or she wasn't just gonna dope fucked or anything like that. And I didn't even portray her, and it didn't come across as that. In fact, I kind of elaborated into it to make it to what it was, but that's the story. And with Herodotus' story and Scythians and everything, that's what happened. So we went in there, got high, and then came out a totally different person that was not getting any respect before, and people couldn't pay attention to was a crazy lady, like the guy on the left here, and then all of a sudden she came out and she was the sanest person in the entire village and the only person that could help you and answer your questions and get you on their way. And the next day, without the ceremony, without the thing that she went through, without the little bit of hash oil like he just took right there, she faded back into obscurity. Almost like those Delphic oracles and stuff that you hear about where they keep them so loaded up, but somehow they knew everything. It's kind of odd. Amazing here, if you haven't realized it, if you were to smoke pot, about 2, 3, 4 minutes it'd start hitting you, and then so it wouldn't be anything different than this. But instead of this man getting high, like you would think of in any way, it really just like a painkiller takes him out of his pain, which is not pain, it's a different affliction, and turns him back into his humanity self here on the right. Where he even started singing there, where he couldn't talk correctly before and had stutters and all kinds of hitches and couldn't really get a thought out. All of a sudden he's just sober as hell. In fact, right after he gets sober as hell there, he asked everybody, hey, have y'all had breakfast? Have you had lunch? And they start laughing because, oh, you've probably got the munchies. And he goes, oh yeah, probably so. But he knows he hasn't eaten yet too, so really I'm kind of hungry anyhow. Kind of amazing. I wonder if you've ever seen the movie Awakenings with Robin Williams. It's one of his first roles that he ever did, where he plays a serious role in it, and it actually goes off a true story, and they show you about it, where somebody figured out that the dopamine that runs through your body, like adrenaline, happens whenever you do things, and some of these people is probably lacking, and these people that are all stove up and can't do anything, he starts giving dopamine to them, and they actually come back. That's why they call it awakenings. Finally they come back awake. Watched a few things where they've taken people out of comas with stuff like that too, and it's quite amazing. Also with marijuana and its derivatives, I've seen them take children that are having constant 20 to 40 times a day having epileptic type seizures that are incredibly bad, some of them grand mal. And they have this lady, and she's got the little pen in her hand, and they're trying to talk to her about it, and it's brand new to her. She's very excited about it. And they ask her, okay, she's 20 to 40 is an average that y'all got and everything, so what is the average here? And she says last Thursday, and she just starts crying. So it's amazing sometimes what drugs can do for people that have certain afflictions. And I really think that humanity ought to look at this in a different light, something that we had not too long ago. Sure, there's always these bad things, but let's not focus on the bad, for if you can derivative the good out of it, it's amazing. Just like somebody can be addicted to heroin, the derivative out of that becomes all painkillers that we have today. We still don't understand where it works correctly. Let me know what y'all think down in the comments below, but I just thought I'd share this with you. It's something that's such a dramatic change inside of 4 minutes. I can't fathom what this is for this man. Realizing where he was on the right, realizing where he was on the left just 3 or 4 minutes before, and unable to control himself all morning, all days before and everything, waking up in that state and everything else, to all of a sudden sitting here and being back to his normal self and wanting a hot dog. Peace.